Wisconsin's more infamous tall tales, from hair-covered forest elves that roam the northern regions to mysterious aberrations that haunt its numerous...
Is this Jake?
On the morning of April 1st, 1987, production director Steve Cook is sitting in the booth at WTCM-FM in Traverse City, Michigan, waiting to find out whether his April Fool's Day prank is about to land. Over the previous week, he had written and recorded a fake folk song about a creature that did not exist, set the verses to dates ending in 7, and credited the whole thing to a fake songwriter named Bob Farley. The expectation that morning was simple: get laughed at by host Jack O'Malley and move on with his Wednesday. Within hours, the station phone lines collapse under listener calls, and within weeks the track becomes the most requested song in WTCM's history. The letters start arriving a few months later, and Cook is reading them at his desk with hands that have started to shake, because the people writing to him are not laughing. Each one describes something they saw with their own eyes.
This thing walked out of the corn, and it was about 6 foot tall. It had the head of a dog.
By his own admission decades later, Steve Cook had invented the entire legend out of his own imagination. That should have been the end of the story. Almost 40 years later, witness reports out of the northwestern Lower Peninsula are climbing toward numbers nobody in this story ever predicted, and the map of where they cluster is the part nobody wants to talk about. The official Michigan Dogman story opens in 1887, deep in a logging camp in Wexford County near the Manistee River. 11 lumberjacks are working the timber. A man named Johnson encounters a creature he assumes is a dog until it stands up on 2 legs and looks him directly in the eye. Here's the catch: none of that ever happened.
In his police report, he said that this predator looked like a wolf-like beast walking on 2 legs.
No 1887 newspaper article from Wexford County exists in any archive. No logging camp diary records the encounter, no court file documents it, and no grave marks the aftermath. Every trace of those 11 lumberjacks lives in exactly one place on Earth, which is the second verse of Steve Cook's song. Cook himself told the Detroit Free Press in 2011, quote, "I made it up completely from my own imagination as an April Fool's prank for the radio and stumbled my way into a legend that goes back all the way to Native American times," end quote. The 1907 widow with the dream of dogs that walked like men, the 1917 sheriff finding 4 horses dead of fright, the 1957 priest discovering claw marks on a church door from a creature that would have stood 7 feet 4 inches tall, and the 1967 van of hippies and the park ranger named Quinlan, none of those incidents appear in any independent newspaper, archive, or police file. They are song lyrics. Pay attention to this part because it shapes everything that comes next. What Cook handed northern Michigan on April 1st, 1987, was a fictional creature. By July of that same year, something had started happening that nobody, including Cook himself, has ever fully explained. July 16th, 1987, roughly 100 days after the song first aired, a 911 call goes out from a small unincorporated community called Luther in Lake County, deep inside the Manistee National Forest. Cadillac Evening News reporter Mark Marentet drives out to a residence after dispatch logs an animal attack on a cabin. The damage is real and physical. Lake County Detective Sergeant Jeff Chamberlain responds to the scene, joined by DNR Conservation Officer Chuck Turk and Sergeant Ron McCarty. The story runs the next morning, and the Associated Press picks it up by midweek. Paul Harvey reads it aloud on his News and Comments broadcast. Officer Turk goes on the record telling reporters it was almost certainly the homeowner's own dog trying to claw its way back inside the house. Detective Chamberlain reaches a different conclusion entirely. He keeps a piece of the wood from the scene. Years later, on the record with the Cadillac News, he tells them flatly that he believes in the Dogman. 2 trained law enforcement officers, the same scene, the same evidence, and 2 completely different verdicts. And, get this, Chamberlain still has the wood today. Out of the entire historical record, the Luther call stands as the only Michigan Dogman case that comes with a police report, a named detective, and a same-week newspaper article. Everything before it traces back to Cook's lyrics. Everything after it traces back to what came pouring into Cook's mailbox. December 29, 1991, in Walworth County, Wisconsin, about 300 miles south of Luther, a reporter named Linda Godfrey publishes a front-page story in a small weekly paper called The Week, titled Tracking Down the Beast of Bray Road.
So Linda Godfrey was a journalist working for the local Elkhorn paper, The Week, which came out every Sunday.
She illustrates the article with her own pencil sketch. Local animal control officer John Fredrickson admits, on the record, that he keeps a file in his desk drawer labeled Werewolf. Godfrey was no cryptid hunter when this started. Her background was a degree in art education from the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh, 2 sons at home, and a steady job writing features. The Bray Road article was supposed to be a Halloween season curiosity for the back page. National Enquirer hired her and a photographer to stake out the road. Inside Edition filmed inside her newsroom, and the story refused to let go of her, just as she refused to let go of it. By 2010, she had published The Michigan Dogman, Werewolves and Other Unknown Canines Across the USA, compiling decades of interviews with people who had nowhere else to take their accounts. Her 2012 book, Real Wolfmen, released through Tarcher and Penguin, expanded the dataset nationwide. She told HuffPost reporter David Sands in 2017, quote, "It's fully canine, walks on its hind legs, uses its forelimbs to carry chunks of roadkill or deer carcasses, has pointed ears on top of its head, big fangs, a bushy tail, and walks digitigrade, meaning on its toe pads, the way every real canine does," end quote. That last detail is the one she insisted a human in a costume cannot fake. If this is making your skin crawl, hit subscribe right now, because what comes next is the part the song's own creator quietly admitted. And what the territory map shows is something he never had control over. In 2007, a piece of footage surfaces online claiming to be 8mm home movie film from the 1970s, recovered from an estate sale somewhere in Michigan's Lower Peninsula. The reel runs silent for about 3.5 minutes. Snowmobiles in winter, children playing in a yard, then a creature loping on all fours through a clearing, charging the camera, and the film cuts to black. Cryptid forums name it the Gable film, and the community goes electric overnight. Linda Godfrey accepts a copy in good faith, and the History Channel commits an entire episode of Monster Quest to investigating its authenticity. March 24, 2010. The final episode of Monster Quest airs under the title America's Wolfmen. A Michigan resident named Mike Agrusa walks on camera and confesses on national television. He shot the entire thing himself in 2007 wearing a homemade ghillie suit, and he proves it by demonstrating the suit and reproducing every period prop. The footage was a hoax from the first frame. This is where it gets darker. Steve Cook helped distribute the Gable film. The man who created the legend in 1987 also helped circulate the most famous fake evidence for it 20 years later, and he has never apologized for it. When pressed by Skeptoid in 2015, Cook told them, quote, "I'm tremendously skeptical, because I've seen the way folklore becomes built from the creation of this song to what it's turned into, but I do believe people who think they saw something really did see something," end quote. That sentence is the most unsettling line in the entire story, and it came from the man who started it. Run by 2 Army veterans and a network of state coordinators, the North American Dogman Project is a private cryptid research group that maintains a crowdsourced map of self-submitted reports. The data has never been peer-reviewed, and no Michigan state agency has touched it. In late 2025, submissions to this tracking map hit a 50-year statistical peak, with reports bleeding out of Wexford County faster than investigators could verify them. Plot the Michigan submissions on a map, and the dots cluster in a corridor. Manistee County, Wexford County, Lake, Newaygo, Mason, Oceana, Benzie, Leelanau, Grand Traverse, Antrim, Kalkaska, Missaukee. The Manistee National Forest by itself covers 540,000 acres of second-growth hardwood and managed pine, and the combined Huron-Manistee National Forests stretch across nearly 979,000 acres. The Pere Marquette State Forest spreads through 13 counties on top of that. The reports cluster inside the wilderness itself, not around the towns. The geography matters. Sightings driven entirely by Cook's song echoing in people's heads would cluster where the song is heard, around radio coverage zones and tourist traps. Instead, the dots concentrate where the radio coverage thins out and the trees take over. Texas-based interviewer Vic Cundiff, who runs Dogman Encounters Radio, has now logged over 600 witness conversations since launching the show in 2014. He told Michigan Public's On Hand podcast on October 31st, 2025, quote, "The main thing I do is actually just trying to help traumatized Dogman witnesses. I don't concern myself with trying to prove their existence."
He just tried to chew in around the doors.
End quote. 600 people, most of them anonymous. Most of them describing the same digitigrade gate Linda Godfrey insisted could not be faked. Skeptics have answers ready.
I look over in the corner of my room, and I see the same exact dark shadow figure in the corner looking at me.
The Michigan Department of Natural Resources confirmed in 2024 that the Lower Peninsula black bear population grew 55% between 2012 and 2022. And bears stand on their hind legs to investigate scents. Eastern coyotes in Michigan now carry between 11 and 14% wolf DNA, weigh up to 60 pounds, and stand higher at the shoulder than their grandparents did. University of Michigan biologist Barry O'Connor has documented that sarcoptic mange turns ordinary canids gaunt, hairless, gray-skinned, and unsteady on their feet, which matches the description witnesses give almost line for line. Those explanations cover most of it. They do not cover the cabin door in Luther. They do not cover the consistency of the digitigrade gate detail across 600 witnesses who have never met. They do not cover why a fictional song from April 1st, 1987, has now generated almost 40 years of physical, geographic, and behavioral pattern. Cook still says he made it up. The witnesses still say they saw something. The damage to Detective Chamberlain's piece of cabin wood is still real, and he still has it. Here is the question the territory map cannot answer. If a song invented an animal, and the animal then started showing up across 1.5 million acres of Michigan wilderness, what is generating the pattern? And what is the next discovery from inside the Manistee National Forest going to look like when it makes this one feel like the warm-up? Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. The forest is patient. The song is older now. And whatever is moving through those trees has had 38 years to learn the route.